forms of the game, the selectors. And, yeah, I mean, does Finch deserve to come in ahead of Hussey? I'm not sure that he does.
Well, I'll be honest. I like the top four they've come in now with Finch and Warner at the top, Hughes at 3, Clark at 4. The question then becomes: is it George Bailey at 5 or is it David Hussey? They're grooming George Bailey to be their next short form captain guy. Yeah. He's the guy they want there, so that's why he's there. I feel that's the spot. Really, it's George Bailey there over David Hussey, and they want Finch at the top of the order. I can see that thinking. Whether I think it's time to take out an experienced guy like David Hussey, I question that. But I'm not opposed to bringing Aaron Finch in the side at all. I think he's a terrific batsman and can bring a lot of excitement.
Yeah, and look, what I see, Darren, and just before, what they've done, and I reckon this is collective over the 3 forms of the game, I reckon they've used this period to really, really find our next best side, because we've spoken about it before. The domestic level is very, very good in Australia, and I think, and that's what they're doing. They think, well, these guys are going to go, and in all forms of the game, eventually they're going to go. So why persist with this when we can start making a side, looking towards their World Cup campaigns and getting all that going now? It's probably the same sort of thing as Michael, unfortunately. Does David fit into the World Cup structure, I suppose, for want of a better word?
Yeah, it would appear he doesn't.
Yeah.
You're listening to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It's 8 minutes to 9. Your next fresh news update coming up at 9 o'clock. Kevin Brasher, Craig Crowley and Darren Madigan here talking through the cricket. We just got another text from Andy. Apologies to Andy from last week. We missed you one from last week. You're talking about Phil Hughes and the good job he did keeping last week before in that big loss we had to Sri Lanka as a positive. And you're dead set right. He did a great job. And as we were talking off air, Craig, he gave... Matthew Wade often jokes about giving more chance to bowl. He's had a couple of opportunities, so it was good to see Phil Hughes get in there and do such a good job. But I've just got another text from him.
Just before that, just touching on that, does that, when you're touring, and this is a question for anyone who wants to answer it, does that give us an opportunity to take maybe another bowler or another batsman and not take the second keeper, which they do a lot of the times, if they know that Hughes can actually work behind the stumps, or are we putting too much onus on a batsman to do two parts of the game? It's a question there.
The batsmen have been doing 2 parts of the game since Wayne Phillips first started doing it in the 80s. I mean, that was when everything sort of started on this whole business. But look, it depends on how long the tour is traditionally. If it's a shortish tour, often someone will take on the responsibility of taking on the gloves if needed. And if it's a longer tour, I mean, you wouldn't do this on an Ashes tour, you wouldn't think. I mean, you usually carry 2 keepers on an Ashes tour. So, I would hate to think that they would do anything other than that. But you've got to remember, too, these days, it's an absolute prerequisite that the keeper has to be a batsman of at least averaging around the 30 mark.
And it's often more important than the keeping. Well, we look at that's what's happened with Brad Haddin. His batting went down. He was, I think it's fair to say, a better keeper than Matthew Wade is. But Wade's batting came on, and that's why they kept Wade in the side ahead of Brad Haddin, I feel.
Oh, that goes way back. Richie Robinson, Wayne Phillips, and probably to a certain extent Adam Gilchrist.
Yeah.
So,
Anyway, yes, we move now. Andy had another text for us. This is probably a question for you, Darren. Is it just me, or does anyone else miss the Australia Day test?
Yeah, I was thinking that the other day. We used to have those milestones, Boxing Day, Australia Day, and there's a New Year's Eve, New Year's Day test as well.
South Australia, right?
And, I miss it. Yeah. I mean, I'd like to see it back. I don't see any reason why you can't fit a test match in there in the summer.
Yeah, I think there's nothing better than sport on Australia Day, personally. Well, I'd be all for it.
Well, that's Australian.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And that's what we're about.
Yeah. So
Good point.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you for your continued contributions to the show. We very much
look forward to one next week.
We look forward to one next week. Thanks a lot, Andy. We move tonight. There is some cricket being played tonight. It is the T20, Australia versus Sri Lanka. Australia was ranked 7th in the world in the T20s. George Bailey feels that is underachieving. We're coming up against the world number 1 T20 side in Sri Lanka. Very good in the short form of the game, Sri Lanka. Do you think that's a fair call from George Bailey? I feel he's 100% right. We've got some very exciting players that we should be performing better than 7th in the world in T20s.
I think any time we're 7th in the world in anything to do with cricket, we've got to start asking questions. Yeah. I mean, I think it was captain obvious with that comment. Yes, it is underachieving. Yes, we need to do better. We should never be 7th in the world in any form of the game. I mean, we're supposed to be one of the superpowers of world cricket.
Can we put a finger on why we underachieve in this shortest form of the game?
I think I touched on it before. I think we're, and Darren, I know you're not an advocate for the rotational policy, but the thing is, what we're doing, we're disjointed a little bit with this rotations, and they're not stabilised, and I think that's got a lot to do with it. If you've got a steady side going in, week out, who's batting with you, you feel confident with that play. You probably think to yourself, I know these guys will make runs at the top of the orders. You know that the bowlers will do their job. The stability of it probably upsets the group a little bit, I would suggest.
We'll take a look at the T20 side for tonight. George Bailey is the captain. There's also Ben Cutting, Xavier Doherty, James Faulkner, Aaron Finch, Ben Lachlan, Sean Marsh, Glenn Maxwell, Mitchell Stark, Adam Voges, Matthew Wade and David Warner. Plenty of talent there, but as you say, Craig, there's a lot of chop change sort of stuff there. I mean, so much has been said about the rotation policy over the last few weeks, but something from my perspective, I don't mind seeing different teams for different forms of the game. I just wouldn't mind seeing consistent teams in those different forms, because it is so much of it. I wouldn't mind if we've got guys who just play T20s and specialise in 2020 cricket and short-form cricket. I've got no problem with that, and then leave guys like Michael Clarke, leave him for test matches, keep him fresh for that. It's when you see the chopping and changing within those teams and no one really knows what's going on, that's when I see a problem.
And in that situation, Kev, but if you're leaving out the Michael Clarks in one of them forms of the game, or someone who's exciting to the group, say, obviously Dave Warner's in a dubious sort of position now because he's playing three forms of it because he's exciting. He will draw people to the ground, there's no doubt about it, like an Andrew Simons used to do, sensational to have there. But if you start saying, for longevity, we've got to keep David Warner out of their one of the forms of the games, and say it's hypothetically a short form, well, people might go, geez, I really wanted to see him play. And
that's true.
Then you sort of, it's a real hard, they're between a rock and a hard place, because they've got to have they've got to try to field their best side. They've still got to tick the seats over. But, the T20 one is probably the one most expendable, because that is a fun day. Regardless of the situation, it's a bit of hit and giggle. And it's
you should trademark that, Craig, I think.
But it's entertainment for a lot of other reasons apart from the cricket. The whole thing about, going there and enjoying the game.
That's true. And I think David Warner is a bit of an exception to what I was saying before. He's one of those guys you want to see in all those games. That's just the way he plays. He suits all three forms, and you'd want him in all three games. Whereas I see, some more of the test guys, although there's not many test guys in the T20 side at all. There's just him and Matt Wade really just looking at that side. So, I don't mind seeing different sides for different forms, but, try and keep it a little bit consistent. We've got to take a quick look at the Big Bash League before we got the news in a little over, just under a minute and a half. The Brisbane Heat, they won the Big Bash last week. They went down to Perth against a full house, hostile crowd, and they came back with the biscuits. They did a terrific job. 5 for 167. They were at the end of their 20 overs. Perth Scorchers, in reply, 9 for 133. It's a 34-run win for the Brisbane Heat. Joe Burns was the main man with the bat, 43 from 27. Also got help from Luke Pommersbash and Dan Christian with 37 each. Kemar Roach, 3 for 18 with the ball. A good team effort there. And they just got hot towards the end of the season, the Brisbane Heat. No pun intended there. No pun intended at all there. But they weren't really towards the top of the table at all year. No one was really talking about them all year. They got on a roll at the end, and it just proves if you hit form at the right time of the year, you can come away with championships.
As we were talking about off air, about peaks and troughs and stuff like that. And they've obviously hit their form. I think 2 games before the finals, they were battling to get to 4th spot. So, it's a great tribute to them to come out, and especially Pommersbash. He was being sensational. I think the 100 he made in the semi-final, I think it was just, that's what you need. Anyone who makes 100 in T20, that's sensational form.
I think we're probably going to see him in the Australian T20 side, probably at some point over the next few months. So they got another T20 on Monday, and then another one against the West Indies coming up. But we've got to go to the news now. Stay with us here on Sports Scene 101 FM.
Your station, 101 FM, with Saturday Sports Scene.
Yes, welcome back to Sports Scene here on 101 FM. It is 5 minutes past 9. Kevin Brayshaw, Craig Crowley and Darren Madigan with you as always, taking you into the second hour of the show. Before we get on with the rest of the show, just a quick announcement. 101 FM would like to thank the good guys at Logan Home for their kind donation for our radiothon. The good guys at Logan Home have up to 40% sale on until this Monday, so support those who support your radio 101 FM. To donate to 101 FM's radiothon, telephone 3808 8101. That's 3808 8101. FPOS is available. Thank you very much on behalf of us here at 101 FM. Quick update of all the scores from overnight. Of course, Roger Federer going down to Andy Murray in that epic semi-final last night in the Australian Open. It was 6-4, 6-7, 6-3, 6-7, 6-2 in favour of Andy Murray. In the women's doubles final, it was the world number one Zerani and Vinci getting up over Australian pair Ash Barty and Casey Dellacqua 6-2, 3-6, 6-2. In the A-League, the Central Coast Mariners 3-1 up over the Adelaide United, solidifying their spot at the very top of the A-League ladder. In the NBL, Cairns 85-71 over Melbourne, Perth 62-59 over Townsville, and on Thursday night, the New Zealand Breakers 95-76 over the Sydney Kings. That was their 8th consecutive victory for the New Zealand Breakers, flying high on top of the NBL at the moment. In the ABL, the Brisbane Bandits went down to the Sydney Blue Sox 13-0. Bit of a spanking there at the hands of the Sydney Blue Sox, who also won the first game 6-2. So the Bandits find themselves in a tough spot their last two games of the regular season if they want to push for a spot in the finals. That's all the up to date with all the scores for the last overnight and days in between. Darren, we want to move now down to something I know you hold dear to your heart. That's the world of netball. Australia has suffered their first ever series defeat at the hands of England over there at the London's O2 Arena. They went down 51-49 to England in Game 2, giving England a 2-0 series lead.
You know how you wake up in the morning sometimes and you hear a score and you think, okay, I haven't woken up yet?
This was one of them, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's how I felt the other morning. I could not believe what I was hearing. And then I thought to myself, okay, we've put an Australian E side in. But I've got to tell you, when you actually look at the starting lineups, I mean, they weren't anywhere near what our best sides could be. I mean, we're sadly missing Laura Geitz and Nat Medhurst for starters. And they didn't start with Catherine Cox either in the, I think it's the second game here. Yeah, the second game. But look, you know, we shouldn't lose matches to England. And especially, you know, with players like Tamsin Greenaway that not playing at international level at the moment. I think she might have even retired, actually. I'm not quite sure on that one. But we shouldn't be losing to them on that front. But look, you take a look at some of the players that were playing in that first match. We still had, you know, the Caitlin Bassetts and the Monia Gerards, who are, you know, quality players, and they would be in our A side normally anyway. And yet we still went down. So yeah, I mean, if you take a look at the lineup in that first game, we had Monia Gerard at wing defence, Catherine Cox was shooting, and Susan Prattley as well. Maddie Brown at wing attack. I mean, this was actually a pretty high-quality team. Not our best, but nevertheless still a high-quality team. And yet we still managed to go down to England. So, look, I don't think it's a changing of the guard or anything crazy like that, but it's certainly not something you would want to come back to Australia and, you know, it's a bit like when Rick Ponting went over to England and lost those Ashes series.
Well, the BBC have said, speculated that now it's England's time to come to the top of the rankings with Australia. You don't see that happening?
No, that's just silly. That's just silly talk. I mean, they got two other teams to beat before they get close to us.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's Jamaica and New Zealand. And I can guarantee you, New Zealand wouldn't have let this happen.
Darren, like, not very often I hear it in your voice. It's not only a sad voice I hear, but you seem a little bit lost for words, mate. It's really got you, hasn't it? It's affected you big time.
That really is rare.
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But, you know, one-offs happen in sport. But when they went and won the second match,
yeah,
I'm thinking, you are kidding me.
Is it got to a stage, Darren, where, you know, like Australia's been at the top of the tree for quite some time. Obviously, there's great rivalry between them and New Zealand. But do you think, you know, with the technology that's going into all sorts of sports at the moment, sides can be picked off because they analyse other opposition a bit better? It's not just a case now of being primarily a better team, like we know it happens in all codes of football, and probably in a lot of other sports. But do you think they got to the stage now that they can say, well, hang on, they've got faults here, they've got faults here, and we can just pick them off?
Oh, absolutely. And I think that with Fastnet coming along too. I don't think that can be underestimated either, because the girls are that little bit more fitter now too, because even though it's a shorter form of the game, it's actually a very quick form of the game. The shooting has to be a bit better as well in that form of the game. So you bring that to the low. It's a bit like with one-day cricket when it first came along, and now with T20, it's